Naomi May Burrows was born March 7, 1939, and passed away October 12, 2025. Naomi May Burrows was born in Pasadena, California, to David Franklin Gray and Emily Bell Billy Gray. Her parents lived by a deep and unwavering faith in God, traveling throughout the United States as evangelists, spreading the word wherever they went. Their lives were guided by devotion, faith, and service. This devotion to faith formed the foundation of Naomi's strength and resilience throughout her life. From the start, Naomi was musical. Her father often said if they set the Bible to music, Naomi would know every word. She played piano, organ, accordion, and ukulele. Throughout her life, she shared that musical gift. During her preschool years, Naomi lived on the road with her parents, traveling through every state in the United States and part of Canada. Her father was an evangelist, and the whole family participated. When she was 4 years old, Naomi became known as the singing evangelist. She played her ukulele and had to stand on a chair to reach the microphone to sing. The family even recorded albums featuring Naomi and both her parents singing and playing together. Later, when her father had a church of his own in San Diego, Naomi led the church choir, played the organ every service, and taught both music inside and outside of the church. Music was her form of praise and expression. Her mother was the perfect pastor's wife and homemaker, and she taught Naomi all the domestic skills expected of women at the time: cooking, sewing, budgeting, and keeping a spotless home. That old-school upbringing left a lasting imprint on Naomi. Proper etiquette and being a good host were front and center in her life. She passed these qualities down to her children. Knowing how to set a formal place setting, knowing various ways of folding cloth napkins, knowing who to seat next to one another at a dinner party to promote lively conversation, all became part of her influence on her family. When her household chores were done, Naomi's real joy was in seeking out her father's company. Pastor Gray was very mechanical and could fix anything. When he could afford to, he bought his own printing press, which allowed him to create flyers and materials to hand out for church services. Naomi loved working beside him, learning how the press worked and how to fix things when they were broken. She was mechanically gifted and fearless in tackling things that weren't, quote, ladylike, unquote. Her father expected a lot of her and even told her she wasn't allowed to drive a car until she could change a tire herself. And she did. If Naomi had been born in a different time, she might have become an architect or even a helicopter pilot, but in the 1950s, such paths were not open to most women. Still, that same curiosity, ingenuity, and independence carried throughout her entire life. Naomi's father was a brilliant and highly academic man, and Naomi took after him. She excelled in school and eventually university. Deeply curious about why people think the way they do, she studied psychology, which gave her insights into the human psyche. She eventually graduated with a degree in psychology. She used this training to become a marriage and family psychologist. Unusual for the time, Naomi balanced being a housewife, mother, and mental health care professional. Naomi's first marriage was marked by pain and hardship. Her husband's alcoholism and abuse tested her strength in unimaginable ways. Yet even when her church and the world around her offered no support for women leaving abusive marriages, Naomi had the courage and conviction to stand up for herself. She defied the stigma of divorce and chose her own freedom. That decision reflected one of the defining qualities of her life, Naomi's ability to forge her own path, no matter how society judged her. Her strength and fortitude were steadfast and rooted in self-respect. After this difficult chapter, Naomi met the man who would change her life forever, John Harvey Burrows. She fell madly in love with him, but didn't think he would ever love her in the same way. They were truly opposites. Naomi was the pastor's daughter raised in the church. John was a Hollywood film producer 15 years her senior, living in a bachelor pad high in the Hollywood Hills. They came from opposite worlds, but together they made the perfect match. Their first date captured their differences perfectly. When John ordered a scotch and soda, Naomi, unfamiliar with cocktails, randomly picked the one on the menu that spoke to her spirit: the missionary's downfall. She politely took a few sips, found it dreadful, but John, ever practical and unwilling to waste a good drink, happily finished hers too. It was the first of many moments where their differences defined them both, but never divided them. Their bond deepened during a month-long road trip together to Yellowstone National Park. John loved spontaneous adventures and scenic detours, while Naomi was a planner like her father, but somehow they found the perfect balance. Naomi would quietly prepare a not-so-spontaneous picnic basket with wine, cheese, cold cuts, salads, everything John loved. And John would veer wildly off course to discover the perfect off-road lunch spot. On that trip, John realized for the first time in his life that he never tired of spending time with Naomi. Usually he needed space from girls he was dating, but not with Naomi. When they returned, with Naomi's apartment lease ending, John suggested she, quote, save money, unquote, and just move in with him. Not the most romantic proposal, but true to John's no-nonsense practicality. They were married non-long after, and though their outside worlds collided, they blended beautifully together. Their wedding took place in a small chapel in Hollywood. Naomi designed and sewed her own 1960s lace, knee-length, mod-styled wedding dress. The reception was held at John's home on Sunset Plaza. Naomi often laughed about how the two sides of the family were split with the pool between them. John's Hollywood friends on one side, her church family and friends on the other, only mingling at the punch bowl in the middle. But regardless, it was a joyful, genuine day filled with love and one of the happiest days in Naomi's life. Naomi and John built a life grounded in love, humor, and family. After multiple miscarriages in her first marriage, in 1968, Naomi was blessed with her first child, John Harvey Burrows III, named for the man she adored most in the world. 2 years later came Mindy Gray Burrows, and their family was complete. They moved from Sunset Plaza to Beverly Hills and later to West Los Angeles so their children could attend one of the best schools in the area. As a mother, Naomi was unlike anyone else. Having grown up in a home where duty and faith came first, she was determined to build her own home around love and acceptance. Between her and John, they filled it with laughter, affection, creativity, and joy. Her husband taught her how to tease and be playful, and she passed that lightness on to her children. She let them play outside, get messy, ask questions, and be themselves. Things she hadn't been allowed to do freely as a child. She raised her children outside the box, using her heart as her metric, instead of following the typical constraints of society. When her parents adopted 2 infants later in life, David and Deborah, they asked Naomi for advice on how to parent differently the second time around. She told them, let kids be kids, give them lots of hugs and affection, and be more lighthearted. It was advice that later reflected her own parenting philosophy. Naomi brought much of what she learned from her parents into her home. Her mother's skill in the kitchen, her father's mechanical know-how, and her own flair for design. She could fix a broken lamp, install a phone jack in any room, and create clever kitchen inventions to make life easier. Formal dinner parties were a regular occurrence, and she trained her children in what was expected. But even for everyday meals, Naomi always set a beautiful table with a rose from her own garden in the center. She was the bond that kept us all together. She was the anchor of our family. Naomi was creative and thoughtful in everything she did. Birthdays were unique and special. Martha Stewart could have learned something from her. One year, she brought cupcakes to school that she baked in ice cream cones and frosted them to look just like ice cream. Another year, she designed a treasure chest cake for John's pirate party with gold chocolate coins and fake jewelry spilling out of it. Mindy loved it so much, she got a similar cake but made into a jewelry box. When the family lived at the beach in Newport, Naomi showed her children how to make sand-cast candles by digging holes in the sand, lining them with nice-looking shells, pebbles, and glass, and pouring in the melted wax. At home, she would spend hours building advanced model rockets with John, and when their dad came home from working on location, the family would go somewhere to launch them high into the sky. Every moment was an expression of creativity and love. But Naomi's parenting stood out for another reason. She encouraged her children to question, to think, and to reason. Where many parents saw questioning as defiance, Naomi saw it as curiosity. She told her children, "If you can make a good logical argument for it, your father and I will consider it." That openness gave her children confidence and independence, even inspiring young Mindy to make plans to travel around the world at an early age. But with her son, Naomi loved talking philosophy. They would go out for lunch and she would ask him deep questions about his thoughts, attitudes, and ideas. As he matured, she nurtured his introspective and thoughtful nature. Her influence shaped his life tremendously. In 1979, at the age of 40, Naomi's life was forever changed. She was kidnapped, brutally assaulted, and left for dead at the bottom of a ravine. It was an atrocity that might have destroyed anyone else, but Naomi's love for her family fueled her will to survive. Despite severe life-altering injuries, she climbed out of the ravine and found help. That strength and emotional resilience, that dedication to live life to its fullest, to love and to not let the darkness win, that became the defining story of her life. Her body was never strong again, but if there's a single word that could describe Naomi, it is strength. Strength was not just a description of Naomi. It was truly the essence of her being. Strength in the face of danger, strength in the face of physical setbacks, strength in the face of dozens of surgeries, strength in the face of never-ending, excruciating pain. Naomi never gave up. Life was to be lived. That indomitable strength is something that cannot be adequately described. Through it all, she taught us what courage really looks like. That trauma left lasting physical pain, but it never broke her spirit. Naomi turned her suffering into service. For more than 40 years, she volunteered at a rape crisis center in Los Angeles, supporting other survivors and helping them find courage, healing, and hope. Her resilience and refusal to let that night define her were acts of heroism in and of themselves. She continued to live, to laugh, to love her family, and to find joy in small, beautiful things. Every year, Naomi made sure there was a family holiday, time set aside for laughter, adventure, and togetherness. The Burrows family took some unforgettable road trips. One trip to Yosemite became legendary after 2 bears stole all their food the very first day. John heroically, maybe not so smart, tried to scare them off by throwing oranges and even hurling boiling water at them, but the bears were unmoved and the story became a family classic, retold for decades. Another memorable road trip took them through California's historic gold rush towns, where the family panned for gold in rivers and streams. Most summers, though, were spent on the water, first in Newport Beach and later in Morro Bay. John loved being near the ocean, and even though Naomi herself never learned to swim, she made sure her children did. John III became a strong swimmer, pushing himself to go farther and faster each year, while Mindy and her dad shared a special bond sailing together. In Morro Bay, John shared his love of kayaking with the kids. Naomi would sit on the deck of Gray's Inn, watching the harbor, and later listen at dinner to her family's stories of being out on the water or their explorations on the sandspit. She and John always had binoculars at hand so they could watch the birds, the sea otters, or just check out the other boats and make up stories about the characters who lived on them. Naomi took it all in from the deck and enjoyed being a part of it all vicariously. She found joy in her family's joy. Those trips to Morro Bay became annual family gatherings that continued throughout her life. The grandkids were brought up on kayaks from the time they were babies, and John could still be seen out on the water well into his 90s. Family games were another of Naomi's great joys, a constant part of the everyday life and every vacation. Whether it was cards, word games, or long rounds of Rummikub, Naomi loved the challenge, the laughter, and the connection. It was a pastime she enjoyed until her very last days. Her children and grandchildren will always have the fondest memories of playing games with her until the very end. Naomi and John always shared a love of travel and discovery. They delighted in discovering new places, sampling unfamiliar flavors, and browsing local markets filled with color and interesting ingredients. Together, they explored the world, visiting family in New York, savoring crab on the San Francisco wharf, and spending months abroad. They especially loved their time in Argentina, where John worked for several months, and of course, Italy, where John's mother was born. Because John's mother was from Naples, Italy, they decided one year to bring their now adult children and first grandchild to Sorrento. They rented a home in the hillside village of Santa Agata, overlooking the sea, and spent 2 joyful weeks exploring the Amalfi Coast, sharing meals, laughter, and adventures. The trip was so special that it inspired 2 more family journeys with their ever-growing family that later included her siblings and all of her grandchildren. They traveled to Rome, Tuscany, Milan, and always back again to Sorrento, the place that had captured their hearts. Though John had cared for Naomi through much of their marriage, especially as her physical challenges grew, in his later years it was Naomi who became John's caregiver as he battled Alzheimer's disease. Her devotion never wavered. She remained by his side with unwavering love and respect until his passing, a loss that broke her heart deeply. In her later years, Naomi was surrounded by the next circle of love, devoted friends and compassionate caregivers who became part of her extended family. They brought comfort, laughter, and connection, helping her continue to live with the dignity, humor, and grace that defined her entire life. Naomi was a woman of contrasts, strong yet gentle, logical yet creative, serious yet playful. She could fix a leaky faucet, design a room, cook and serve an elegant feast, design and sew a dress, or comfort a heart. She was as comfortable speaking or singing in front of a group as she was rolling up her sleeves to repair a broken lamp. And through it all, she never lost sight of what mattered most: love and family. Naomi is survived by her 2 children, John Harvey Burrows III and Mindy Gray Taylor, John's sons Diego and Roman Burrows, John's fiancée Gina Wilmoth and her children Brandon and Vanessa, Mindy's husband James Taylor and their daughter Jasmine Rose Taylor. She is also survived by her siblings David Gray, wife Esther Gray, as well as her sister Deborah Jones, along with many extended family members and friends who adored her and will continue to carry her memory forward.